Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. I'm thrilled today to have Austyn Morrin on our podcast. I met Austyn through Support Now. She is currently leveraging our registry product to support her son, Covey, who is currently in the PICU. And as I was learning more about her story, really was inspired to reach out because Austyn is still very much in it. She is going in between hospital to home. She has an older daughter, and so I thought her perspective while she's navigating this messy middle, both taking care of her newborn son while also figuring out what motherhood looks like in this season, that she could provide a really refreshing outlook on what support looks like in this season. So, Austyn, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Austyn, why don't you share a little bit more about your son, Covey? Obviously, I've learned a good bit about him from our previous conversations, but tell us a little bit more about his situation and kind of where he's at today.
Yeah. Okay. So you said a newborn. He is now 7 months, which just feels insane. No, it definitely still feels like a newborn because he was admitted to the hospital right at 3 months on his 3 month anniversary. And we were admitted straight from a routine cardiology appointment. So I guess a little backstory before he was admitted, my son Kevin has Down syndrome, and we found out about that prenatally a year and like 2 weeks ago. So found out that he had Down syndrome, and then a couple weeks later found out that he had holes in his heart. So yeah, it's been, I guess, a whole year of this navigating it. And so he was born my whole pregnancy. We had multiple weekly monitoring appointments pretty much for the entirety of my pregnancy. He ended up having to come early because of some growth issues and decreased movement, and things like that. He spent 2 weeks in the NICU, which was actually a lot less than we thought that he would. So we thought we were kind of in the clear. We thought we were safe. We were like, wow, you're prepping for a really long NICU stay, so I'd only have 2 weeks. Honestly, a relatively easy version of the NICU. Nothing really exciting happened other than he did have one surgery the day after he was born, but otherwise everything went very smoothly. So we thought we were in the clear, and we were just doing monitoring for his heart defect and just kind of keeping a close eye on that to know when he would need surgery. And then, yeah, back in November, he came down with just a little cold. I got it first, and for me as a grown adult, it was just a little stuffy nose, mostly just annoying, but nothing too drastic. And then, yeah, at his routine cardiology appointment, he had decreased oxygen levels, and mostly it was out of an abundance of caution. His cardiologist said, let's have you go into the hospital. And that was a Thursday, and my thought was, okay, it's just going to be overnight monitoring, maybe the weekend, and then we'll be home. We'll be good. And here we are 4 months later. It was not just weekend monitoring, and he ended up getting really sick really fast. Started on the regular floor of the hospital, and I think 2 days later was upgraded to the ICU. And because of his cardiac condition, he's in the SICU, but at our hospital, the SICU and the PICU are combined. So I just call it the PICU. But yeah, so we've been there for 4 months, and he's been through quite the journey. Again, yes, sickness escalated really quickly. So let's see, we were admitted on the 13th. By the 25th, he was intubated. And then a week later, he had cardiac arrest. The day after that, he was put on ECMO, which is the highest level of life support that you can get, which is where a machine pumps your blood. It works. The machine is your heart and your lungs to give your lungs and heart a break to recover. So he was on ECMO for a week. He was taken off of ECMO. The scary thing with ECMO at his age is, and potentially lifelong, is that it's a one and done thing. There is no going back to it. So once he was taken off, it was a very careful and thought out decision to come off of that. And I think one of the scary things with that is the blood vessels on the right side of his neck are no longer working. So he only has blood flow to his brain on one side, which is just a scare. My husband and I, obviously, it was either that or he doesn't make it. So of course we consented to it. But that was, one of the, I guess, maybe the first scary decisions we had to make. And maybe not, I think, just the scariest, because it really was about players. If we don't do it now, he's not going to make it. So yeah, ECMO for a week. And then, that was the beginning of December. And we thought he was getting better, and he wasn't getting better. He wasn't gaining the weight that we needed for him to get to his heart surgery. And then they ended up we decided that moving forward with a trach, to get him a trach and a G-tube to help support him to be able to grow, to get to his heart, surgery was the next move. So that's what I guess that got us through January. He got his trach and G-tube surgery at the beginning of January. And then his heart was repaired a month ago. He unfortunately did not gain the weight that we thought that he would. Even with the trach and the G-tube, he just wasn't, his body was still just working way too hard. So he's now a month post open heart surgery, 2 months post trach, and he's finally getting there, finally on the other side, looking to the side of urine. So
Austyn, you're so
long road.
it's such a long road, and again, you're still in it. Excuse the simplicity of this question, but I want to ask it anyways. How are you? How are you doing?
That's a really good question. I think how I'm doing changes day to day. In some ways, like, again, like I said before, it's also relative of how I'm doing, or like, the like, oh, he's doing good is still so like relative because like, yes, he's doing good, but he's not doing good compared to an average 7-month-old. So the same way when I say that like I'm doing good, it's like I'm not, I think it would be a lie to say I'm doing good compared to my normal standard of good. It's definitely my new version of it. And some days I feel fine. I feel like this is, again, that we've been doing this for 4 months now, that it just feels normal, which is crazy that it could ever get to that place that it feels normal. So yeah, I think ups and downs. I think the last couple weeks in particular, I feel like have hit me harder than a lot of the previous weeks. And I think part of that, I think there's like a combination of things, whether it's postpartum related or hitting the year mark on finding out about all of this and realizing like we're nowhere near where I thought we'd be a year out from the diagnosis.
Well, and especially to your point when you said that his NICU stay was so short, I think it
Mhm.
probably introduced almost like this false sense of optimism
Yeah.
that his path
Yeah.
might be a little bit more traditional and maybe not
Mhm.
as challenging as kind of people become to realize around children with Down syndrome and
Yeah.
all the challenges that come post after they come.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing I'm just wondering about is, again, you last time I spoke to you, you were in the hospital. What is the breakdown? Like, what is the schedule that you're currently on? How are you balancing time at home versus time in the hospital? What has been your approach over the last few months?
It has been day by day, whatever feels, whatever I guess I feel like I can do that day. Up until Friday, this last Friday, we had support. So my husband and I live in New York. Pretty much our entire family lives in Utah, so we don't have any family near us. And then our like friend circle is also kind of small, and most of them work or have kids of their own. So yeah, our physical support network is very small where we are. And so, yeah, having someone here at our house to really just take care of my daughter has been so helpful. So that was, I guess we wouldn't have made it through without having someone to take care of her, because that's obviously my son is a top priority, but I think more than anything, she's my top priority because she's gonna remember this. She's 4.5. There's things about this that she's going to remember, whereas Covey is not, thankfully. And so having someone just to make things as normal as possible for her, then made it more possible for me to spend more time at the hospital or to be able to go later in the day so that I could sleep in because I didn't sleep overnight or something like that. But now that all of our extra help is gone, it's I drop her off at school in the morning and then I head to the hospital. Thankfully, she's in full-time school. I didn't initially want her in full-time because, again, she's 4.5. It's pre-K. She didn't need to be in full-time school, but it has turned out to be the best thing, for us because she has just a constant 6 hours every day where she just gets love and attention from her teachers, gets to play with friends, and is really just thriving and loving school. So that has been a huge relief to have that so that I know, like, I can be at the hospital for 6 hours, and I know that she's taken care of, and she's having fun, and she's not missing me. She's not questioning who's gonna take care of her. And then I leave the hospital, like, 1:45, and I go pick her up from school, and then we get to spend the afternoon together, and that's been nice. And again, like, comparing it to our relative normal, adjusting her expectations, it's been nice to be able to have that time with her.
Well, and it seems like for her, it gets her routine, and
Mhm.
maybe more than anything, that sense of normalcy for
Yeah,
her is something that, kids, that's what they thrive on. They thrive
absolutely.
on what's the expectation for today and for my weeks. And so the gift of school doesn't just introduce social opportunities or
Mhm.
academic opportunities. It just gives her almost like the facade of a season of normalcy when you know in reality that nothing about this is
Absolutely.
normal and it's obscure, but if you can almost like shield her for that from that in some respect, that's what school has introduced.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess our hope has been through this that, like, she'll remember the pockets of good, and I mean, hopefully, there's not, like, a ton, our memory of at 4.5 is still there's not a ton that we remember, but hoping that, it's the good things. It's that the few times that she did get to go visit Cubby in the hospital, it's that she got to stop at the gift shop and pick out a toy or a treat, and that, like, those little things rather than, like, "Oh, yeah, my brother was in the hospital attached to a bunch of cords and monitors," and things like that. So, yeah, definitely, I think that's kind of been probably one of our, like, top priorities is just making sure that things stayed as normal as they could for her,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that it stayed fun and exciting rather than just like, "Oh, mom's leaving me again," that it was, "Oh, I get to stay and play with grandma," or, "I get to stay and play with my aunt," or something like that.
Austin, is there anything that you have done or have tried to do to kind of keep your head, to keep your mental health stable, to keep your hopes and spirits high? Are there any rituals, habits, practices that you have found yourself either doing from the very beginning or starting to introduce that has allowed you to navigate this? Because again, this is extremely emotional.
Mhm.
You shared everything that's going on with Covey and you talked about it as if like then we did this, and then this, and this,
Yeah.
and then, like, it's all of those things could be its own podcast episode. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, cardiac arrest," like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like all of these things are so major. They've just been packaged in a way that it all kind of falls underneath this umbrella of, "My son is in the PICU."
Mhm.
And what are the things, if any, that you've done to just try to maintain your own sanity, your own sense of optimism through this time?
That's a really again, I think it varies day to day. In the beginning, it was making sure that I came home because I wanted to stay at the hospital, and for the first week, I did stay at the hospital with him, and then once he got to the PICU and I liked the nursing ratio better, because I was, like, a 3-month-old with 1 nurse to 5 or 6 patients just was too much for me. So once, like, I guess realizing, like, he was in good hands, he was going to be taken care of, I could go home and take care of myself and be with my daughter. I think that was the first thing. So I guess, like, as a, recommendation to someone else who would be going through this is, like, you're allowed to go home, your child will be taken care of, and obviously, like, they have a whole team taking care of them, so you are about to step back and take care of yourself or take care of your family at home, whatever, that looks like. So, obviously, yeah, coming home, sleeping in my own bed instead of the hospital couch, fold out bed situation, and then actually, like, eating adequate meals, and that these all feel like such basic things, and that was, when I talked to the people at the hospital, they're like, "Oh, like, what are you doing for self-care?" And I was like, we are not to a self-care point, we are to, making sure that the basics are done. So, making sure that I was drinking water, I made sure to get, like, water flavoring to make it easier and more enjoyable. Pretty much just, like not that I, like, threw, like, budgeting out the window, but recognizing that, like, if the difference between, like, eating a good meal, like, was paying $10 at the hospital cafeteria versus, like, saving money and, like, probably not packing like, an adequate lunch from home because I just wasn't in the place to do that. So little things like that, and I kinda started picking, if I went down and got food at the cafeteria, I picked up a chocolate chip cookie or something, just, like, little things like that, but it was like, "Okay, that's, like, one of my favorite things, so I can make this a teeny bit better." So I guess part of that was looking for those little things that I could do to make it better.
Yeah, it's like we talk about self-care, and I think when people think about that, they think of skincare and
Um,
massages and
yes.
these very, like, beautiful, aesthetic, very nice to have things, and what you're explaining is very basic. It's like, what do
Yeah.
humans need to survive? Well, first of all, they need quality sleep,
Yes.
and quality
Absolutely.
sleep, as you said, is not typically in a hospital,
Mhm.
right? Typically, you're gonna find that in your home with your pillows, your sheets, your
Yeah.
bedding, all of those things, and then but I love what you said, and I think this is important, like, I know, or we've learned rather through support now that oftentimes appetite is one of the first
Mm,
things to go when you're in grief and when you're in shock. And you are, right? You are
mhm,
grieving a life that you thought you might have with two kids at home and all of those things. And so sadly what happens during grief and especially in that trauma period is you have no appetite.
mhm.
And you also know you have to eat. So it's almost like you have to trick yourself. It's like, okay, well, if this doesn't sound exciting to me, what can I spend $10 more for
Mhm.
that would get me excited or at least make eating more palatable,
Yeah.
frankly, because I know how important it is for me to have fuel and to be able to
Mhm.
think straight. Because without food and water, you're just not going to be able to make the best decisions for him or for yourself.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
I think it's interesting because, again, this is why I was so fascinated with telling your story on this episode. Is that if a mom is listening to this and they find themselves in a similar spot as Austin, sometimes the things that you need are actually the simplest parts of
Mhm.
life, but they can also be very difficult to achieve, right? It's not easy for you, I'm sure, to willingly leave the hospital, seeing Covey there so that you can get quality sleep. That is like the
Mhm.
definition of mom guilt. And so
Yeah.
you're kind of fighting that tension of like, I know I need to do this for myself and for my daughter and for my
Mhm.
husband, and I'm still leaving him here in this hospital. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about like, have you have those self talks or how have you and your husband navigated that distance between the hospital and home, knowing that you don't quote win on either side. Like you're faced with a lot of bad options in some ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, like, there is no, like, proper balance. I guess the 2 weeks in the NICU gave me, like, a little preview because it was like no matter how much time I spent in the NICU, no matter how much time I spent at home, it just wasn't enough with either of my kids. And especially coming like, I'm a stay-at-home mom because I love being with my kids. And so to go from, like, being full-time with my daughter to then her being in school and missing that time with her and, like, then the hospital. And yeah, like, all plans went out the window of what I thought, life is gonna be with 2 kids, and so, yeah, trying to find that balance, it doesn't exist because every day is gonna be different. Some days my daughter needs me more, and she recognizes, like, just the other day, I did not sleep that night. I think just kinda the last 2 weeks, my sleep has been so off. I haven't been falling asleep before, like, 2:30 in the morning, and so I
Mm,
had, like, slept in late and didn't get out the door, like, while she was at school, and so I, like, ended up staying so I could pick her up from school and, like, see her for a few minutes, and then when I went to leave, she was like, "No, mom, play with me." I was like, "I haven't been able to, like, sit down and play with you for a while," and because my mom had been here, she was okay with it because like, she was able to play with my mom and, like, was having a lot of fun, so she didn't necessarily notice, but today she was like, "No, mom, play with me, like, I wanna do this," and then she wanted to read books, and I was like, "I can't leave when she's asking me to stay." And then on the flip side, like, especially, like, more recently with Cubby, since that he's, like, off of his sedation and he's older now, his heart is repaired, so he's not as tired, that he's actually having, like, good wake times, and he notices when we're there, and so that then makes it harder to leave, that if he's not like, I like to make sure he's asleep before I leave because I'm like, I can't leave when his eyes are awake, like, because then he'll know. But then also the thought of, like, him waking up from his nap and being like, "Wait, mom's gone again."
mm,
So
it's hard.
I don't know. I
Uh,
don't know if we're doing it. We're just every day's a little bit different and just hoping that no matter what, both of my kids know that I love them. And now this is wow, that's always what gets me teared up is just, yeah, you can't win. You can't because it's impossible. It's impossible to be both places at once, especially when you want to be in both places. And then, like, taking time for myself, I feel like the only time that I don't feel guilty or I feel less guilty is after my daughter goes to bed and I have, like, an hour where I'm like, "Okay, she's asleep and most likely Covey's asleep," so, like, I can just pretend that both my babies are sleeping under the same roof. But there really yeah, there just isn't. There isn't that balance, and you just do the best that you can because the situation just sucks. It's
yeah.
not there isn't winning, and especially because it's, like, cold and flu season, my daughter's not even allowed to come visit. So we've gotten, like, special permission for her to come, a few times for a few minutes, but that's yeah, there really just there isn't.
Yeah. You've had to throw away any expectation
Yeah.
or hope that it would be different, and I really think that what you said, there's such an important thing that you touched on, which is that every day is different, and so the bar can't be, "This is my routine
Mhm.
every day, and this is what I'm gonna follow for myself and for my daughter and for Covey." Like, it's just not gonna be like that,
Thank you.
and being willing what you're saying, or at least how I'm interpreting it, is that you're really just trusting your instincts. You
Mhm.
instinctively, when you feel like there's an opportunity to lean into time with your daughter, you're doing it, and when you feel that pull, that mom heart that we have with our kids where
Mhm.
it's like, "Nope, it's time for me to stay longer with Covey." You're following that too,
Yeah.
and that is the best that any mom can do.
Mhm.
It really is. I'm really curious, Austin, to learn about, you touched on this a little bit about your support system being back in Utah, having a smaller subset of friends that are able to help you navigate this. And at the same time, what has this experience taught you in terms of how to support others when they're navigating difficult times? Now that you've been in this, what do you see yourself doing differently moving forward, having had to see what it's like to be in that primary caregiver
Mhm.
role and all that comes with that responsibility?
This is something I have thought about a ton, and even before going through this. So the reason we live far from our family is my husband went to medical school out here, was in residency, and now in fellowship. So I guess I've spent most of my time as a mom solo parenting, doing, I'd say, like 80% or more. There were lots of weeks where my daughter and husband did not see each other for days at a time because of his work schedule and her sleep schedule and things like that. And then, not having friends in for each of those moves. And so even just like before that, thinking of like how I want to support my daughter when she grows up, especially, if she chooses to be a mom, ways that I wanna support her, and then going through this adds on to that, and I think even before going through this, just thinking of like, okay, I now have a son with a developmental disability, so there's a very high likelihood that he's never going to leave the house, that he's always going to live with me, or at least always live close, and making sure that obviously she's not gonna need the same attention and care that he will likely need as an adult, but I want to make sure that she still gets the option, the opportunity, that she knows that, like, I'm willing to give her that same care and attention if she needs it. So there's been
Yeah.
simple things of, like, I wanna make sure, especially when she was young kids, of, like, if we live close, that I invite her over for dinner once a week, or I bring dinner once a week, or if I'm not close, like, I will send dinner once a week, just as, like, little things. Because even just, like, all of the medical stuff aside, like, being a young mom is really hard and can be really lonely, and so wanting to make sure that I show up for her, not that, like, I haven't been. My mom is amazing, I love her, she shows up for me in every way possible, and so obviously wanting to continue that for my daughter and in other ways of, like, yeah, come to my house once a week obviously come every night if you need to, but especially come, at least once a week, or let me bring you something if you don't wanna leave your house because dragging your small kids out at dinner time is a mess. So I think just, like, little things of, like, making sure that she knows I'm always there, especially because I will have Cubby, yeah, throughout his adulthood, that I'll be caring for him and making sure that she knows. Think within disability and medically complex families, you hear the term glass children, and that is, like, the saddest concept, and I just do not, and that was honestly just something I thought about before even having a second child, like, deciding if we were going to have another kid, was, like, we wanted to make sure that we could give our daughter what she deserved and what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that, like, yes, like, there are so many benefits to having a sibling, but more important than having siblings is having a parent who is happy and healthy, and wanting to make sure that I could still show up for her the way that, like, as the mom that I want to be
Yeah.
with a second child. So that was already, like, a big, I guess, part of our decision-making process. So then to get a Down syndrome diagnosis, and then to have all of this on top of that, I'm like, "This is really challenging
Yeah.
that,
You're being
goal of
tested.
mine," I
Yeah.
guess,
You're
to
being really tested. Yeah.
absolutely.
Austin, can you share with me and to everyone, what are doctors saying about Cubby's time in the hospital? Like, is there a goal date that he is able to come home or be discharged? What does the short term to medium term look like for him?
So he is being discharged on Thursday,
Oh,
unfortunately
wow.
not to home.
Okay.
He is still too critical and needs too much ongoing care. So he is going to be transferred to a rehabilitation hospital where he can get intensive rehab treatment from various physical, occupational, speech, all the different therapies, in hopes that he'll be stronger so that he can come home soon. One of the, I guess, struggles. So with his trach, he's pretty much will need 24/7 nursing care, which our insurance does not currently cover. So we're in the process of we applied for Medicaid months ago, trying to get that worked out, trying to find some way to be able to pay for at-home nursing. My husband and I, we wanted him to come home. We actually had a meeting with his team on Friday, And originally the plan was to have him come home just because the logistics of trying to get the hospital he's at now is close enough that, like, I can walk to. Again, we live in the edge of New York City. We have 1 car. My husband works full time,
Yeah.
so he usually needs the car. So I usually walk to the hospital or take the bus or something. And with the rehab hospital, it's still, like, close. It's thankfully not too far, but it's not walkable, and it's not really an easy commute on the bus either.
Right.
So we were like, just logistically and wanting to be able to be with my son and my daughter at the same time, we wanted him to come home and we were willing. We recognized that that was going to be a lot of work, especially on my part as the primary caregiver, but I was willing to do it and I wanted to do it. I feel like that's kind of been the theme that was ultimately like what my husband and I said to each other when we decided to have a second child was like we were wanting and we were willing. We didn't know how it was going to work out because we were already stressed and overwhelmed with him being in residency, but we wanted another child and we were willing to do what it was to make it work. And that's kind of continued on is like we want Covey and we're willing to do whatever we need to do to take care of him. But unfortunately his team is like we can't. We don't feel safe with that option. And although we don't like it, we disagree with it, we do respect it. And so yeah, he will be going to intensive rehab starting, yeah, on Thursday, and we're not sure how long. The hospital is saying it could just be they're like, "Oh, it'll just be a short stay," but I toured multiple rehab facilities and I talked to different people, and one person said it's usually a minimum of, like, a 12-week stay for all of the training and stuff involved, with the trach care.
Yeah, and how could you've been told that before. "Oh, this will
Exactly,
just be
yeah,
a short thing." So for
yeah.
you, you're immediately yellow flag.
I'm
I
like,
don't know here.
"No." Yeah, if we're home by his first birthday, I'll be surprised. So, yeah, my plan is to get there on Thursday and to tell them, like, we want out of here as soon as possible, like, in the most respectful, kind
Right,
way.
in the most
Um,
responsible way, right.
yeah.
Yeah, you're not the mom that's saying, "I'm scared to take him home.
Mhm.
I'm scared of
Yeah.
this challenge," which is uh, would be more than
Totally
appropriate,
valid.
but totally
Absolutely. Yeah.
valid, like, completely get that. You're the mom that says, like, I'm ready for this transition.
Mhm.
I'm ready to
Yeah.
take this on, and I'm ready to develop our own routine and our own kind of family unit all together."
Yeah.
Austin, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today and sharing more about Cubby's story. Again, you're still in it and it can be difficult to listen to, right? Because it's not this like
Mhm.
cheerful, everything's going great.
Yeah.
And I feel wonderful. And I think that's all the more important why we highlight stories like this because it's not always pretty and it's
Mhm.
not always easy. In fact, more times than not, it's really gray and
Mm.
ambiguous and yet you carry on. And I'm just so grateful that you were willing to come on, willing to share more of your honest perspective on this. I know I've learned a great deal from you, and I hope it's okay. We would love to post your registry in the show notes so that if anyone feels inspired by the story and wants to give to their wonderful family and to really just stay updated on Covey's progress, that they can do so. So, Austin, thank you so much for
Thank
joining me
you.
today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.